Okay, so this is going to be a quick demo on how you can source your R script files for all of your homeworks to make sure that you don't get any sort of execution halted errors. Again, sort of the homework 2 will be the last thing we're regrading for these kind of errors, so it's definitely worth your time to just check and double check right before you submit and make sure that your R script is working exactly like you expect it to. So I'm gonna go through the whole process, and along the way there will be a couple of errors, and then at the very end I'll go through one completely smooth run of a testing for any sort of errors. So if you want to skip to the very end just to see a complete run through, you can do that. Okay, so here's my homework2.r script. It's saved in my homework2 directory. I've got it all complete. I think I'm ready to submit. And now I want to sort of check the same way that we would grade so that I can see if the grading system is going to work for my file. So the first thing to note is that right now there are some variables in my workspace. These might have been from when I was sort of experimenting around on the console, but they happen to be variables that are relevant to this homework. So I'm not sure if my script is working or if the script is relying on the fact that these variables are already here. So to make sure that your script stands on its own, you're going to want to clear the workspace. So that can be done with rm list equals ls, as we've seen, or you can just click this clear button up here and you say yes that you want to remove the variables from your environment. The next thing to note is that I am not in the correct working directory. So you'll see right here on the right by console, it's telling me that I'm in my src directory and stat133, but all of my data is in the homework2 folder. So I'm going to want to change directories to get inside that homework2 folder. Now you can assume that when we grade your scripts, we will already move into the homework2 folder and then run your script. But in order to test like we'll be testing, you're going to want to set the working directory. So we do that with the setwd command, and I'm going to change into src stat133 homework2. And I can double check that I'm in the correct place by running this getwd command. Okay, so now I'm in the right place and my environment is empty, clean slate, and I want to source my file to make sure it's working. And that's fairly easy to do. Because I'm already in the homework2 directory, I can just run source and homework2.r. I can also just up here click on this source button because this script right here is the homework2.r file. So I'll source it and I see this error that pops up. And it's telling me that it's in line 120, and it's this all housing variable line. So I go and I try and find that line, and along here on the edge you see the line numbers, so that's a pretty convenient way to figure out where the error is. And I see this all housing variable line and it looks okay. So I'm wondering, why am I getting an error? Well, if you look a few lines up to the previous line of script, we see that I haven't closed out this second parentheses. And so before R even tries to run your script, it's going to make sure that all of the syntax is valid. And something that wouldn't be valid in R is having an open parentheses and not closing it out, because then R doesn't know sort of where this sum function ends. And so if it's not valid R, when R is scanning through it, it's just going to stop and not run your script at all. So this would be sort of like submitting a paper for some class written in a different language, right? Your other GSIs or professors aren't going to be able to read it because it's not the same language like they're expecting. And then in the same way, this is sort of not valid R syntax, so R doesn't know how to interpret it. So maybe I can just delete this and hope that my code works. So I'll save. And again, I can check and see that my environment's empty. I can check my working directory. It shouldn't change because I haven't done anything to change it. And then I'll source again. So this time I source and I run, and you'll see that a lot of data came up. But I still got this error. And it's telling me error object br5 not found. So in this instance, I have valid R script, but all the way down here, where I defined br5, I tried to call that variable, but I tried to call it using the wrong name. And so when R gets to this line, it sort of hits a roadblock and says, I don't know what capital BR5 is, I'm just going to stop running. And so in a situation like this, your script would be graded up until the line where the error occurs. So you'll notice that in my global environment, I have several variables, but I don't have sort of anything that happens after that error. So if I try and look for R calls, for instance, you'll notice that it's not in my environment. And this is fairly easy to fix. You just delete that line, or if I really did want to call this br5 variable, I would just need to adjust the name so it matches the variable that I've already defined in the workspace. And so now I save it, and this is sort of where it's going to be a clean run through. And so I'm going to just start from the very beginning in terms of what I need to do to get a completely clean run through of sourcing my file right before I submit. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is clear my workspace. Everything's gone, it's a clean slate, and sort of just like the graders won't have access to any of the variables in your environment, you're not going to have access to any extra variables that you don't define in your script. The next thing you'll need to do is set your working directory to wherever the homework is located at. So for me, it's in src, stat133, homework 2. And again, assume that the graders have already moved into the proper directory when they're running your script. So you don't need to define that anywhere inside of your script. Just do it in your console when you're testing your file. And so I am in the correct directory, my environment's empty, now I'm going to source, and it looks like everything's clean. I haven't gotten any error messages. I see a bunch of plots that got produced, so these are all of the different plots that my R script produces. And then up here you see all of the different variables that your script produces. Now you can sort of look through these to make sure that they're named correctly if you want. You can look through these plots to make sure they look like they should. That's a good extra sort of double check. But at this point my code is completely ready to go. I've tested it by sourcing it, and I would want to save my file. I can file save, but I just saved it with Command S, so it doesn't need to be saved anymore. And then at that point I would immediately want to go run git add, git commit, git pull, and git push. So this sourcing should be done immediately before you submit your homework to ensure that nothing gets changed in between. You don't want to have everything working and then accidentally add a parentheses here that causes an error, right? That would be a problem. And so I'm gonna just one more time repeat the process so that everyone sees it. Set wd src stat133 homework 2, and I spelled the name of the directory wrong, and now it should work. And I source it, everything runs, I've got all my variables, I'm good to go, and at that point I could commit and push my work. So that's sort of the process that you should follow before any homework, quiz, test that you're trying to submit to us.